How does the ZV-E1 compare to the FX3 in real-world use? Can you reliably use it as a B camera for professional work with the FX3? And what about the color matching between the two cameras? Does the ZV-E1 footage look the same as the FX3 in real-world use? Well, that's what we're going to be answering in this video. And if you're like me, you've spent hours and hours on YouTube browsing reviews to figure out if the Sony ZV-E1 would be a good choice for a B cam for your professional video work. And it can be really stressful when we're deciding how to spend our hard-earned money, and I hope that this video can help you make the right decision. Now, I've had both the ZV-E1 and the FX3, which I'm shooting on right now, for some time, using them for professional work, which is why I want to actually share my experience with you. Here's a list of topics that we're going to be covering, and if you're a creative professional like me, I know that you're busy and you don't want to waste your time. So there are also going to be timestamps down below in case you want to jump around to the relevant sections. Now stick around until the end for some of my practical tips for the ZV-E1 if you decide on getting one for professional work. Let's start off with some spec comparisons. Now, while their specs in terms of video capabilities are basically the same, there are some important differences between the ZV-E1 and the FX3 that you should consider in your buying decision. Now, obviously, the Sony ZV-E1 is smaller and lighter at 233 grams approximately than the Sony FX3, making it more portable and easier to handle. Both cameras have the same sensor, but there may be some differences in the readout, as we'll see later in this video, so make sure to stay tuned. The Sony FX3 is designed for professional video production and has more advanced video capabilities such as focus mapping, plus dual card slots, right? And customizable buttons. You can see a whole bunch on this body, as well as a full-sized HDMI port, which is really nice to have. The Sony ZV-E1, however, is designed mainly for vlogging and YouTube content creation. And while it lacks some of the pro features of the FX3, like custom buttons and mounting threads all over the body, it has some really neat AI features, such as subject tracking and improved autofocus for vehicles, insects, and animals that the FX3 does not have. It also has dynamic active stabilization, which together with the lighter body and upgraded autofocus actually makes it perfect for gimbal work or handheld work. The Sony FX3 has a more professional design with an included top handle that has XLR inputs for doing professional high-quality audio, as well as a better grip. As of this video, the FX3 is selling for about $3,900 US, and the ZV-E1 is around $2,200 US. Now, that's about a difference of $1,700, which is why the ZV-E1 has caught the attention of many videographers. At least on paper, it seems like the ZV-E1 should be able to give us the same quality video as the FX3. But is that really the reality? Let's talk a little bit about color matching. The Sony ZV-E1 and the FX3 have the exact same full-frame 12-megapixel image sensor inside, so I expected that the image out of them should be exactly the same. In my real-world usage and testing, this is what I found using the same settings and S-Log picture profile. The image out of the ZV-E1 is mostly similar to the FX3 with some slight differences. Here are a couple of real comparisons that I set up using the same lens to avoid any color shifts due to different glass. So here's the shot with the FX3. And here's the exact same shot with the exact same lens with the exact same picture profile and settings on the ZV-E1. Can you tell the difference? And here are some shots from a client project that I shot with these two cameras. As you can see, they are very similar under exactly the same lighting conditions using the exact same settings, even when you zoom in close. Color grading them is pretty much the same. However, there are some minor differences, and this might be more due to slight variations in manufacturing. One might even expect these differences to persist if you had another identical FX3, since no two sensors are exactly the same because of these manufacturing differences. You can reduce the amount of difference between the cameras by using the exact same type of lens on both, that way the glass is similar. However, even then, due to manufacturing differences, you may still see some slight variations between them. And this is why for my test, I simply exchanged the lenses between the cameras for consistency. I wanted to keep that constant. That's not a variable. But at the end of the day, if you have decent color grading skills, you should have no problem with matching these two cameras. So be at ease. If that was your main concern, the ZV-E1 should make for a great companion camera to the FX3 or something like a Sony A7S3. However, the image quality alone is not the only consideration. What about other differences, right? How do they practically impact your usage? So let's talk about some real-world video performance. From my experience using both cameras, the ZV-E1 definitely does not feel like a professional grade camera. The form factor and look both make it feel and look like a consumer level sort of camera in your hand. However, this doesn't affect the image that you get out of it, necessarily. For handheld shooting, the lack of a top handle and some additional weight does actually mean that the ZV-E1 is more susceptible to your hand jitter. So, try not to slam back those Monster energy drinks and coffees on your shoot. You probably shouldn't be doing that anyways. While the sensor may be the same, handling the two cameras is quite different, and sometimes that can make a big difference between the type of shot that you'll get with an FX3 or with a ZV-E1. So make sure to factor that in before you shoot and ask which one of these cameras is the right one for your shot. Also, if you're shooting long-form content outdoors in direct sunlight on warm days, the ZV-E1, it's not going to be reliable. That's just the reality. It overheats, okay? Recording on hot days in direct sunlight fairly quickly within 20 to 30 minutes is going to overheat. However, if you're just using it for short burst recordings that are less than 10 minutes at a time, or if you're using it in a cool environment indoors, then you're probably not going to struggle as much with that issue. I've actually used it to film long-form interviews indoors with no problems of overheating. I just make sure to give it a break between the shots by turning it off. Whereas on the FX3, I could usually just leave that running forever. I do find that the balance on the camera while using a bigger lens is quite lopsided, right? It feels very front heavy, especially if you try using something as big as this, like a 70-200, right? So I generally use it only with smaller prime lenses like this 35mm. Just note that it may be more difficult to balance on a tripod or on a gimbal if you've got a bigger lens attached to this. Now, while it's nice to have more custom buttons, I find that for me, as a B camera, it's not really been an issue. I do find, however, that you can accidentally change the settings on the touch menu interface. So make sure to swipe it off the screen and double check your settings before hitting the record button. Next up are some of my own practical tips that I've found helpful from using the ZV-E1 on shoots. But if you're getting value from this video, please do me a solid and drop a like or comment and subscribe to stay up to date on more content. If you do end up getting the ZV-E1 as a B cam with your Sony FX3 or similar main camera, here are a few practical tips that I've found helpful when using it on a shoot. Firstly, give it a warm-up before a long recording. I actually have a whole other video explaining this in detail. The card's going to be here and a link down in the description. But the ZV-E1 has become infamous for overheating. However, there is a way that you can optimize for a long-form recording and get 1.5 to even 2 hours of continuous 4K recording out of this camera without it overheating. And that's simply to warm it up before your long recording by turning it on for a bit and letting the body warm up a bit. I found that having it on for 20 minutes or so before I shoot and then letting it rest for 10 to 15 minutes before hitting that record button for the long recording actually gives the best results. I've consistently got longer recording times without overheating, without using a fan, using this method rather than just starting from a cold start. I know that seems counterintuitive. Again, if you want a detailed instruction on this method, check out the other video. Secondly, you'll notice that I have a small rig cage. Get one. If you're going to be using this on a professional shoot, let's be honest, it doesn't really look that professional of a great camera right out of the box, right? However, if you get a small rig cage, not only does it help to beef up your ZV-E1, but it also gives you a ton of mounting options for accessories as well as a better grip, right? For better ergonomics. You can see that my pinky finger isn't falling off here. And let's be honest, how much of your video accessories that you buy are simply to beef up the look of your video rig in order to impress your clients? Let me know in the comments below. The micro HDMI clamp is also great for your peace of mind here so that you won't rip out the connection accidentally. It's fairly inexpensive of an accessory and I think it'll pay for itself very quickly. If you want to do long form recording on the ZV-E1, make sure that you get yourself a USB-C battery bank and an external monitor recorder. I use the Atomos Ninja 5 and I'm using an Emoto battery bank. These are pretty, well, this one is pretty affordable. You can find similar ones on Amazon. And this will actually give you a bit more security of recording when you're using the Ninja 5 for long form content, rather than just relying on the camera's internal recording and battery. Now I'll link my gear as well as a few other options for your considerations in the description below. With the cage, a monitor and a battery bank on the ZV-E1, not only will it look more impressive, but it also will help to stabilize the camera, even when shooting it handheld. Even though the camera has awesome active dynamic stabilization, those modes actually crop in on your image, which may not be ideal when you're trying to shoot super wide, like for real estate, for example. So adding a little weight takes some of those micro jitters out. Lastly, make sure that you get the latest firmware updates for the ZV-E1, which gives you the ability to record 4K 120 slow motion as a video option. You can download it directly from the Sony website, and it seems also, at least in my experience, to fix some minor bugs in the ZV-E1 also. Now overall, I'd say that if you're willing to deal with the differences between the ZV-E1 to the FX3, or you're on a tight budget, then the ZV-E1 will actually be a really good B cam to shoot with for your FX3 or even a Sony a7S III, since both of those have similar sensors and color signs. I've not regretted my decision and really enjoy using the ZV-E1. Once you embrace the differences in its design and form factor and pick the right camera body for the shot that you need, I think that it can become a really great tool in your arsenal. I love using it as a less conspicuous carry when you don't want to draw a whole bunch of attention, or for doing social media content like vertical videos and so on, or for gimbal work and handheld work. Remember, different tools for different jobs. Don't try to knock a nail in with a pair of pliers. So first, figure out what's the job that you need to do, then consider the features of these different tools, and that will help make your decision a lot simpler. So, are you gonna buy a Sony ZV-E1? Let me know why or why not in the comments. Well, that's it for this video. My name is Thaddeus, I'm from Curious Creative Media, and I hope that you found it helpful as I try to create videos that will help other fellow professional creators with my honest reviews and share tips from my own experience. My affiliate links are down below. If you're going to buy one of these products, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and it gives me a little kickback that keeps me producing these videos. So if you've got some other tips that you think I missed or would like to, me to tackle some other topic in the future, please. If you've got some other tips that I missed or would like me to tackle some other topic in the future, please feel free to drop a comment down below. And until next time, go create something awesome.